Before I start this video, I feel like I have to make it clear that there was no actual drinking or driving during the making of this video, nor during my vacation. I recorded this video over the span of like a week, and more so the actual traveling aspect was just an excuse for me to talk about music and beer, which I love. So, drink responsibly. So, every vacation has to start inevitably at your own front door. And for me, this front door is located in North Carolina. So, I figured the first band in beer that I would try to highlight would be a good old local band and brewery that I can, get to within my own home state. For breweries, I had no shortage of good ones to pick from. North Carolina has become a craft beer mecca, if you will, with cities like Charlotte, Raleigh, and especially Asheville being homes to like hundreds of breweries. So, I mean, from Charlotte, I could have gone with Heist or Legion Brewing or Birdsong Brewing. From Raleigh, I could have gone with Raleigh Brewing, Aviator Brewing, or Gizmo Brew Works. I had to go with Asheville, though. That is probably my favorite city for beer across the board, just in general, all the United States. For the Asheville beer that I picked, it had to be a nice sessionable IPA from Highland Brewing. And of course, I had to go with Daycation, because thank God I'm going on vacation. Thank God it's longer than a day. So, great beer to start a trip with. Nothing too crazy, as I said. It's nice and light, lightly piney, super smooth, not really that bitter. Even some notes of like tangerine and stuff in there. Oh, great pour. 2-finger trick. So for the band, I tried to pick one that, for me, represents North Carolina as a state perfectly through its music. When I think of metal music in North Carolina, I automatically think of sludge metal. This is the birth of really an own distinct, very hardcore influenced style of sludge here in the good old Tar Heel state. We got the likes of Buzz Oven, who went on to spawn like Weed Eater. We also have ASG, All Systems Go, great band. And to me, the most underappreciated sludge band that we have, Sour Vein. Now I feel like because they've moved around a lot, they've really only made their home in North Carolina probably like the last decade and a half, 2 decades. That's why they're not quite as commonly associated or not as referenced as often as the bands that I just mentioned. But to me, this band is just as representative of the North Carolina sludge sound. And this album right here, Black Fangs, is their best record. Now on it, you got a tour de force of punk energy and just riffs. This is a very riff-focused and oriented album right here. Tracks like Gemini, Night Eyes, and Society's Blood all center around just a singular crushing riff that just keeps going and going, but still evolving and really creating a cohesive piece of music. So for me, Sour Vein, probably one of the most underrated bands in general, and definitely one of the best to come out of my home state. Definitely had to give them some love, and this will be the first jam I'm blaring on my drive down to Florida, where I'm headed. So Let's see. Next state is South Carolina. I wonder what music and beer I'll find down there. Alright. Continuing the road trip. Now in South Carolina. Just hopped on I-26. Headed down, still going to Florida. So let's see where we're at with beers and jams. First, the beer. I am pretty well versed in a couple of the craft beer scenes of South Carolina, specifically the one that's up closer to Charlotte and like kind of the Rock Hill and Fort Mill area. There's a couple good breweries up there. Legal Remedy Brewing in Fort Mill immediately pops up in my head. Great stouts there. They have a really good blonde stout of all things. Amore Artis in Rock Hill is also good, and then of course Rock Hill Brewing is a good spot too. The other big brewery hub for me that I've been to has been Charleston, South Carolina. Really great breweries out there with a really fun kind of, you know, laid back beach feel. Definitely a good spot to hit up for a vacation. Talking Revelry Brewing, Holy City Brewing. Also, there's a great brewery that I personally connected to called the Frothy Beard Brewing Company. I walked in, it was just Star Trek, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Battlestar Galactica, just nerdy shit everywhere. Tons of references, you know, in the naming of the beer and the styles of the beer that they picked. So definitely recommend Frothy Beard from Charleston. The other big Charleston brewery is Palmetto Brewing. So they are probably the easiest to come by, and for good reason. They have a great IPA that I often get. I forget the name of it, but it's got a bunch of bikers on the can. Since I'm road tripping right now, not driving, but road tripping, I need to stay awake. So, had to go with an espresso. Nice dark porter. Yep. Right out the gate with that bitter coffee flavor, but also very smooth. Goes great in my my coffee mug. So I had no problem coming up with a good beer or two in South Carolina. Now, as far as the music scene goes, might have been a little trickier. So when I think of South Carolina's like kind of metal scene, definitely a lot of like good local bands come to mind. You know, bands that tour from like Columbia and stuff like that. But as far as like a bigger scene goes, that really kind of exploded, not too much. I mean, recently this local band from, I think they're from Columbia, Worm, they've been doing really well. They're signed on Prosthetic. They have a new album that came out last year called Colony Collapse, which is fucking killer, really noisy, hardcore influenced grindcore. But yeah, besides that, it's a lot of local, like, a lot of thrash bands, I'd say, and a lot of hardcore and metalcore bands too, which, you know, to each their own. Fun to see live, for sure. Definitely, it's a worthwhile trip to either Columbia, Greenville, or Spartanburg, South Carolina, to see some of the live shows sometimes. But as far as scenes go, I actually, a band jumped out more than anything. A band so big and well known that to me they're like their own scene, if you will. And of course I'm talking about Nile from Greenville, South Carolina. Holy shit. Nile are one of the best technical death metal bands of the post-2000s era. Definitely one of my favorites. Their album Annihilation of the Wicked, I almost said Liquid, Annihilation of the Liquid, is one of my all-time favorites for sure. But I've been enjoying In Their Darkened Shrines as of late, because I think I probably overplayed Annihilation a little bit. But this one is a little faster overall, a little more in-your-face kind of technical. I think Annihilation had a lot more groove-oriented tracks. This one definitely does. I mean, the track Sarcophagus is just fucking slow and got some mammoth riffs on it, but across the board, this is probably my second favorite album by now. So you can't go wrong with, as I said, Sarcophagus, Umos, Slayer of the Gods, Churning the Maelstrom, and then the whole In Their Darkened Shrines suite. This is what I'm jamming in the car. Can't wait to actually get back in and continue my road trip so I can finish up In Their Darkened Shrines, the track 9 through 12. So, yeah. Cheers to South Carolina for both their music and their beer. And let's get back on the road. Alright, the journey continues. This time, I'm right across the Georgia border, just outside of Savannah, and I figured it's time for a well-earned break to enjoy some local Georgia brewed beer and some local Georgia music. The beer that I'm having is from Sweetwater Brewing, which I know is one of the bigger breweries in Georgia and really probably on the East Coast and maybe the U.S. in general. I see Sweetwater everywhere, but to me, for good reason. They have such great beer, and I would say they pioneered the kind of skunky and just any kind of weed-like odor or taste in beer. So we got the Mango Kush Wheat Ale from Sweetwater. It's one of their 420 strain series, which a great series of beer. If you ever see it, definitely pick it up, especially if you enjoy the skunkier side. So of course I'm going a little incognito since I am at a Georgia rest stop after all. This is called the Silly Pint from Infinite Ale Works, great brewery based out of Florida. Looks like a glorified coffee mug, but its true purpose to deliver that tasty beverage. Cheers. So yeah, to me, the Georgia brewing scene is definitely defined by the bigger breweries such as Sweetwater Brewing and Terrapin Brewing, but there are definitely some really good, more local breweries too. I haven't had a chance to check out the smaller ones as much just because I'm mainly just passing through Georgia whenever I'm here, but Orpheus Brewing in Atlanta is always good. They have some really good IPAs, and then Creature Comfort Brewing is solid as well for some more of the darker beers, you know. So if you ever see those, pick them up. Alright, enough about beer for now. Moving on to the music. I knew I had to talk about one of my favorite music scenes in general. This is the Savannah sludge scene right here that I wanted to briefly touch on. And I of course wanted to highlight one of the first bands that kind of originated the sound, I'd say. Baroness. This is their first EP. Just really impressive heavy music here, where it's got that punk influence, that doom penchant for melody, and you know, just overall heaviness, and really just some really cool songwriting in here, and a lot of influence, especially from like post-metal. I hear a lot of ISIS in this, honestly, as well. ISIS and like Neurosis and stuff, which is really cool. Overall though, that Savannah music scene is incredibly varied and incredibly impressive. I mean, Baroness with that very heavy, down-tuned, almost post-metal sludge from their early days, to Kylesa, who a lot more psychedelic influence in their sludge metal, but you can tell like the common ground for all these different bands is the hardcore scene, and I think that's kind of what kind of unites everybody at the backbone is hardcore. But then they pack in a bunch of different influences on top of that hardcore backbone to really make it a very diversified scene. So best bands in there for sure: Baroness, Kalesa, Black Tusk, Jucifer, and then can't forget the other big bands from Georgia though. Of course, Mastodon from Atlanta, one of my favorites. Really blew up and are bigger than any local Atlanta scene. Another Georgia band whom I love to support whenever I can is definitely Horsed, noise rock band from I believe also the Atlanta area, but really heavy. You can still tell there's like a little bit of sludge influence in there for sure, and they got that southern swagger as well. But yeah, a lot of good stuff coming out of Georgia, both musically and liquid wise too. Oh well, gotta get back on the road. Finally made it after a couple hours of driving down I-20 and I-75 and listening to this shit, drinking a Corona, wearing this shit. I'm definitely in the vacation mindset. But this is not all Florida has to offer for sure when it comes to both beer and music. So let's see what actually is here as far as the local scene goes. First, gotta snap out of this vacation mindset, get in something more comfortable. Let's see. That's better. All right, let's see what actually represents Florida then when it comes to beer and metal music. So, for beer, I've got this quadruple Belgian style ale from Infinite Ale Works called West Floridian. That's where I'm at. And for music, we got very close to where I'm at from Orlando, Druid Lord, a kind of like death doom band that specializes in horror movie themed music. So let's see how it goes. First, for the beer, this quad is fucking heavy. And I mean that as a compliment. 10.5%, super sweet, tastes strong, but somehow still smooth. Infinite Ale Works out of Ocala, Florida, definitely did themselves right with this one right here. So heavy, rich like blood. Definitely pairs well with some death doom. Yeah, this is some good old plodding, constant, just marching death doom right here. It doesn't necessarily try to build like, a beautiful atmosphere or anything, more of like an atmosphere of dread. Yes, when thinking of bands to compare Druid Lord to, I would definitely think of more Hooded Menace or Autopsy or even Acid Witch, except not as many movie samples, honestly, and without all the crazy psychedelic keyboard work and stuff in there that really makes Acid Witch unique. But this definitely has that Hooded Menace and mid like Mental Funeral, Autopsy kind of feel to it, while still possessing more of its own unique brand for sure. And it definitely sounds like it was dragged out of the swamps of Florida, which to me, this is why this is an obvious pick for my Florida listen. As soon as I crossed that Florida state line from Georgia, I threw this guy on, and it felt right at home as driving over all the, the bridges and the bayous and, all the weeping willow trees and stuff that I saw in the background. Felt right at home. And there's some really just kick-ass songs on here too, with some cool melodies thrown in, but mainly just some really fist-pumping, like death doom anthem parts, especially on the final two tracks, which are my favorite, Gorgon Witch and Circling of Vultures. Both of the two closing songs in this are just absolutely perfect, but can't go wrong with Castle of Count Sadist or Barren Blood either. But I don't know, to me, since I'm staying right close to where these guys are at, and it just feels like a decomposed body crawling right out of the swamp, this was a good pick for just Florida metal music in a nutshell. So, some of the Florida breweries I'd recommend checking out, besides Infinite Ale Works I just talked about here, this one I went to, Dead Lizard Brewing. They're right out of Orlando. And then definitely Cigar City Brewing. They're probably one of the biggest kind of breweries that you can really find in grocery stores all up and down the East Coast. I know Obituary has done some collaborative beers with them, which is cool. And then definitely Orange Blossom Brewing too, if you can find that. So, some beer homework for you too. Well, I guess this finally concludes my travels, so I can finally sit back, have a beer or two, listen to some heavy tunes. So, thank you for watching. Cheers.